In a world where oversharing is often the norm, maintaining a private, sacred space within can be a radical act of self-care. This isn't about shutting people out or fostering secrecy, but about recognizing the value of boundaries for mental and emotional well-being. When we allow every aspect of ourselves to be exposed to external scrutiny, we risk losing the depth and authenticity of our inner life. Like a garden, this private space thrives in quietude, where thoughts and emotions can bloom without the influence of others' judgments or expectations. By embracing this practice, we protect the sanctity of our innermost self, ensuring that our personal growth is guided by our own values and aspirations, rather than dictated by societal pressures. This inner solitude also serves as a foundation for self-awareness and clarity. When we step back from the noise of the world, we can hear the whispers of our true selves. In this silence, we confront our vulnerabilities, joys, and fears, not as reflections of how others perceive us, but as authentic facets of who we are. This space allows us to engage with our emotions without the need to justify or explain them to others. It's in these moments of stillness that we can process experiences, gain insights, and strengthen our connection to our inner wisdom. In Buddhist teachings, this practice is akin to tending to a flame within, a light that remains steady and unwavering, illuminating the path to inner peace and resilience. The practice of cultivating inner solitude also serves as a counterbalance to the overstimulation of modern life. In a world driven by constant notifications, public displays of emotion, and external validation, carving out moments of solitude becomes a necessary antidote to mental fatigue. By retreating into our inner sanctuary, we allow our minds to recharge, process information, and untangle the complexities of daily life. This quiet reflection nurtures our ability to make thoughtful decisions and avoid impulsive reactions. In Buddhism, this deliberate withdrawal from the chaos of the world is not an escape, but a mindful return to the self, a way of grounding ourselves in our inherent strength and wisdom. Moreover, inner solitude fosters emotional independence. By learning to validate our own feelings and experiences, we become less reliant on external validation. This doesn't mean we shun connection or support from others, but rather that we cultivate a sense of wholeness within ourselves. When we approach life from this place of self-reliance, we interact with the world more authentically. Our relationships become healthier, as they are no longer burdened by the need for constant reassurance or approval. Instead, they are built on mutual respect, where each person is free to maintain their individuality while contributing to a shared connection. Maintaining this sacred space within also encourages creativity and introspection. When we aren't constantly sharing or seeking feedback, our thoughts have the freedom to develop and evolve. In solitude, ideas can take root, grow and mature without external influence. This creative incubation not only leads to greater self-expression, but also allows us to explore the deeper layers of our psyche. As we delve into this inner world, we uncover hidden truths about ourselves and the universe around us. In Buddhist teachings, this exploration is akin to walking a spiritual path where each step reveals new insights and perspectives that enrich our lives. Ultimately, creating and nurturing a sacred inner space is an act of profound self-respect and love. It's a commitment to honoring our inner journey, preserving our energy, and prioritizing our well-being. By safeguarding this sanctuary, we align with the Buddhist principle of self-reliance, reminding ourselves that true peace and fulfillment come from within. This practice is not about avoiding the world, but about engaging with it from a place of strength and clarity. As we cultivate this sacred space, we discover that it is not only a refuge, but also a source of endless growth, resilience, and connection to the greater flow of life. Today, we'll journey through a Zen-inspired story that delves deep into the transformative power of preserving your inner world. In this tale, we meet Aiko, a woman whose life seems to mirror the whirlwind pace of modern existence. She moves through her days, fulfilling responsibilities, maintaining relationships, and striving for achievements, yet she feels an ever-present emptiness, as though she is scattering pieces of herself in every direction. Each time she turns outward, seeking validation, comfort, or purpose, she finds only fleeting solace. The teachings of Buddhism remind us that true peace does not come from external sources, and Aiko's journey vividly illustrates this truth. Through her struggles, she begins to uncover the value of guarding her heart and mind from the relentless noise of the world, learning that the peace she seeks has always resided within her. Aiko's turning point comes during a moment of profound exhaustion. After a particularly challenging day, she retreats to a secluded grove, far from the demands of her busy life. In the silence of nature, she feels a stillness she hadn't experienced in years. She begins to notice the gentle rustle of leaves, the steady rhythm of her breath, and the warmth of sunlight filtering through the trees. For the first time in a long while, she feels present, unburdened by expectations, judgments, or the need to prove herself. This moment of solitude awakens a sense of inner clarity, a realization that the constant sharing of her energy and thoughts had left her depleted. Inspired by the wisdom of Buddhism, she resolves to cultivate this quiet sanctuary within herself, a place where she can recharge and reconnect with her true essence. As Aiko begins her journey of inner solitude, she faces resistance, not only from the outside world, but also from within. She notices how deeply ingrained the habit of seeking external validation has become. Friends and colleagues question her sudden inclination to withdraw, interpreting her need for space as a sign of detachment or indifference. But Aiko learns to stay rooted in her practice, drawing strength from Buddhist teachings that emphasize the importance of self-preservation. By setting boundaries and carving out time for reflection, she discovers that inner solitude is not about isolation, but about creating a wellspring of resilience. Each moment spent in stillness nurtures her spirit, allowing her to return to the world with renewed energy and authenticity. Through this practice, Aiko also begins to see her relationships transform. Where once she sought approval and validation from others, she now approaches connections from a place of wholeness. She learns that by protecting her inner world, she can engage more fully with the people around her, not as someone trying to fill a void, but as a complete and balanced individual. Her newfound sense of self-respect inspires respect in others, and her interactions become richer and more meaningful. This shift reflects a core Buddhist principle, that true love and compassion must begin with oneself. By nurturing her own heart, Aiko becomes a source of light and strength for those around her. Aiko's story also highlights the creative power of inner solitude. As she spends more time in quiet reflection, she begins to rediscover passions and ideas that had long been buried under the weight of daily distractions. She picks up a paintbrush for the first time in years, finding joy in expressing herself through art. In these moments, she feels a profound connection to something greater than herself, a reminder of the Buddhist teaching that our inner world is a reflection of the vast, interconnected universe. This creativity becomes a source of healing, allowing her to process emotions and experiences in a way that words cannot. Through solitude, she learns to embrace her vulnerabilities as sources of strength, turning her inner sanctuary into a place of growth and transformation. By the end of her journey, Aiko realizes that preserving her inner world is not a one-time decision, but an ongoing practice. The challenges of life continue to arise, but she meets them with a steady mind and an open heart, knowing she has cultivated a space within that cannot be shaken by external forces. Her story serves as a testament to the strength of self-awareness and the wisdom of balance and boundaries. As she navigates her days, grounded in love for herself and guided by the teachings of Buddhism, she finds that inner solitude is not a retreat from the world, but a path to engaging with it more deeply. Aiko's journey reminds us that the greatest act of self-respect is to honor the sanctuary within, where peace, resilience, and boundless potential reside. Our story begins with Aiko, a woman whose life was a testament to the beauty of openness. She wore her heart on her sleeve, believing that sharing her innermost thoughts and feelings was the purest way to connect with others. To her, transparency symbolized strength and integrity, a bridge that linked her to the hearts of those around her. Friends, family, and even strangers would often marvel at her willingness to be vulnerable, to share her dreams and struggles without hesitation. Yet as the years passed, Aiko began to notice cracks in the foundation of her belief. The openness that once felt empowering now left her feeling exposed, as if the world had access to her most fragile places, and she began to question if her vulnerability had become a burden rather than a bridge. At first, she brushed off these feelings, blaming herself for being overly sensitive. "Perhaps I'm just not strong enough," she would think, pushing herself to remain open despite the growing discomfort. But the moments of depletion became harder to ignore. Aiko noticed how some people in her life seemed to take her vulnerability for granted, offering little in return. Others misinterpreted her openness, twisting her words or using them as weapons against her. She found herself retreating after conversations, replaying her words in her mind, and feeling drained by the effort it took to maintain such deep connections. Her once clear belief in the power of sharing began to blur, and she felt lost in the haze of doubt and exhaustion. A pivotal moment came when a close friend whom she trusted deeply dismissed one of her most cherished dreams. Aiko had poured her heart into explaining a vision she'd carried for years, expecting encouragement or understanding. Instead, the response was flippant, almost dismissive. The sting of that moment stayed with her for days, and she began to realize just how much her openness had cost her. It wasn't just about this one interaction, it was a pattern that had followed her throughout her life. The more she shared, the more vulnerable she felt, and the less fulfilled she became. It was as though her openness had become a sieve, allowing her energy to pour out while leaving her feeling empty. For the first time, Aiko began to entertain the idea that perhaps she had misunderstood the nature of strength. She turned to the teachings of Buddhism, which she had always admired but never fully embraced. In its wisdom, she found a concept that resonated deeply: the idea of inner solitude. Buddhism teaches that the self is a sacred space, a sanctuary that must be nurtured and protected. Aiko realized that she had spent so much of her life giving away pieces of herself that she had forgotten to preserve the core of who she was. This wasn't about becoming closed off or distant. It was about finding balance, creating boundaries, and allowing herself the space to heal and grow without external interference. With this realization, Aiko began a journey inward. She started small, carving out moments of quiet reflection in her day. She stopped oversharing, not out of fear, but as an act of self-respect. In these moments of solitude, she rediscovered parts of herself she had long neglected, the dreams she'd set aside, the strength she didn't know she had, and the peace that came from simply being. Slowly, she began to see her openness in a new light. It wasn't a weakness, but it needed to be guided by wisdom. By preserving her inner world, she found that she could still connect deeply with others, but now from a place of fullness rather than depletion. Aiko's story reminds us that true strength lies not in how much we share, but in how well we honor and protect the sanctuary within. One day, after a particularly painful encounter that left her questioning her own worth, Aiko sought solace at a nearby Zen temple. The temple, with its weathered wooden beams and lush gardens, exuded a quiet stillness that called to her. She wandered aimlessly through the grounds, her mind heavy with thoughts, until she reached a serene pond where an elderly monk, Master Rio, sat in meditation. His presence radiated an unshakable calm, as though the worries of the world could not touch him. Aiko hesitated for a moment, but then felt an irresistible pull to speak. Sitting beside him, she poured out her heart, recounting her weariness, her sense of betrayal, and the weight of constantly feeling exposed. Master Rio listened silently, his gaze steady and filled with compassion. When she finished, he smiled gently and said, "Aiko, the heart is like a sacred temple. If you open its doors to everyone at all times, some may enter with reverence, but others will bring muddy feet, leaving footprints that stain the floors of your soul." His words struck Aiko deeply, and she found herself picturing her own heart as a beautiful temple, worn and tarnished by the careless footsteps of others. She realized she had invited everyone in, without discernment, without asking if they would tread lightly or leave her space in chaos. The monk continued, "It is not wrong to open your heart, but wisdom lies in knowing when to open the doors and when to keep them closed for cleansing and renewal." Aiko felt tears welling in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the clarity the monk's words brought her. She had always believed that keeping her heart open was a sign of strength, a testament to her honesty and kindness. Yet in doing so, she had neglected the sacredness of her inner world. She asked, "But Master, how do I know when to open the doors? How do I protect my heart without shutting out the world?" The monk paused, his gaze drifting to the still water of the pond. "Start by listening to the whispers within," he replied. "When the world becomes too loud, retreat into your temple. Silence will guide you, and in the quiet, you will know who to welcome and who to keep at the gates. This is not selfishness, Aiko, it is self-respect." For the rest of the afternoon, Master Rio taught her about the practice of inner solitude. He spoke of mindfulness, of creating a space within where the chaos of the world could not reach. He explained that this wasn't about building walls, but about cultivating a sanctuary, a place of refuge where the soul could heal and grow. Aiko listened intently, her heart swelling with a sense of hope she hadn't felt in years. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden light over the temple, she left with a newfound sense of purpose. The monk's words stayed with her, a gentle reminder that her heart was a sacred space, worthy of care and protection. From that day forward, Aiko began to see her life differently. She no longer shared every thought and feeling indiscriminately. Instead, she chose her confidence carefully, sharing only with those who respected the sacredness of her trust. She created moments of solitude in her day, retreating into her inner temple to reflect, renew, and reconnect with herself. Over time, she felt her strength return, not the kind of strength that comes from enduring, but the strength that comes from honoring oneself. Her relationships grew deeper and more meaningful because they were built on mutual respect and understanding. Aiko discovered that by protecting her heart, she wasn't shutting people out. She was creating space for those who truly valued her presence. Master Ryo's lesson became a guiding principle in her life. Whenever she felt the weight of the world pressing in, she would close her eyes and picture her heart as a temple, its doors open only to those who entered with care. In the stillness of her sanctuary, she found the peace and resilience she had been searching for all along. Aiko's journey is a testament to the transformative power of inner solitude, a reminder that protecting your inner world is not a retreat from life, but a way to engage with it more fully, from a place of strength, clarity, and unshakable peace. Miko was struck by his words, as if a veil had been lifted from her eyes. She had always viewed her openness as a virtue, a testament to her authenticity and desire to connect. But now, for the first time, she wondered if her willingness to bare her soul had come at the expense of her inner peace. Master Rio, sensing her silent reflection, leaned forward slightly and continued, his voice as calm and steady as the still waters before them. In Zen, there is a teaching of the hidden spirit, a practice of maintaining parts of yourself that only you can see and nourish. It is not secrecy, it is a profound act of self-respect. When we expose every part of ourselves to the world, we risk inviting energies that can disrupt our balance, draining us of our serenity. His words resonated deeply within her. Aiko had always thought that sharing her struggles, dreams, and vulnerabilities was a way to lighten her emotional load, as if dispersing it among others would somehow make it easier to carry. But she now realized that not everyone was equipped to handle her openness with care. Some had responded with indifference, others with judgment, and a few had even used her honesty against her. Each encounter had chipped away at her sense of self, leaving her feeling raw and unprotected. She asked, "But Master, how can one truly connect with others if parts of the self remain hidden? Doesn't true connection require full transparency?" Master Rio smiled gently, as though he had anticipated her question. "Aiko," he said, "connection does not require full exposure. It requires authenticity. The hidden spirit does not mean hiding who you are, but preserving the sacred parts of your soul that are not meant for the world's gaze. You can share pieces of yourself that align with trust and mutual respect, while keeping the most delicate aspects of your spirit protected. Think of it as guarding a flame in the wind. You don't snuff it out, you shield it, so it can continue to burn brightly." Aiko felt the weight of his words settle into her heart, like a seed planted in fertile soil. She thought about her life, her relationships, and the times when she had offered her innermost thoughts to others, hoping for understanding, but often met with something less. She realized that her constant openness had been less about connection and more about seeking validation, proof that she mattered, that she was seen. Yet, in doing so, she had neglected the sanctuary of her own spirit, leaving it vulnerable to the winds of the world. "How do I begin to practice this hidden spirit?" she asked quietly, her voice tinged with both curiosity and hope. Master Rio gestured toward the pond, its surface reflecting the late afternoon sky. "Start by observing," he said. "Spend time in stillness and listen to your inner voice. Notice the moments when you feel drained or unsettled after sharing too much. Reflect on what parts of yourself you wish to keep sacred and why. Then begin to set boundaries, not as walls, but as gates that you open with intention. Share when it feels right, and hold back when it feels forced or unsafe. The practice of the hidden spirit is not about isolation, but about balance, knowing when to let the world in and when to retreat into the quiet strength of your own soul." The simplicity of his advice was as profound as it was comforting. Aiko realized that her journey would not be about shutting others out, but about honoring herself in a way she had never done before. As she sat beside Master Rio, watching the ripples dance across the pond, she felt a shift within, a quiet resolve to nurture her hidden spirit, to guard her flame, and to move through life with a newfound sense of purpose and self-respect. As Aiko delved deeper into Master Rio's teachings, she began to see that healing was not solely about opening herself up to others or the world. Instead, it required the delicate art of setting boundaries, lines that protected her inner strength and shielded her from the chaos of external influences. Master Rio's words "Retain your light within," resonated with her as a call to preserve the sanctity of her inner world. Healing, he explained, was not a public performance but an intimate process that flourished in the quiet moments of solitude and self-reflection. This perspective challenged Aiko's earlier belief that openness equated to connection, teaching her instead that self-preservation was an essential act of self-love. She returned to the temple day after day, her spirit drawn to the tranquil environment where Master Ryo's wisdom seemed to unfold like the blossoms in the temple gardens. With each visit, he guided her to see how seeking constant validation or connection from others drained her energy and fractured her sense of self. "Each time we seek approval," he told her, "we hand over a piece of our light, hoping someone else will hold it for us. But no one can tend to your light the way you can." These words struck a chord deep within her, revealing how her longing for connection had often left her vulnerable to disappointment, misunderstanding, and even betrayal. The cracks in her inner walls, as Master Ryo described them, were not weaknesses, but signs of misplaced trust and the need for stronger boundaries. As Aiko reflected on this, she began to notice how her life had been shaped by this need for external validation. Whether in her relationships, career, or even her own self-perception, she had often looked outward for a sense of worth. These realizations were not easy to confront, but Master Ryo reminded her that awareness was the first step toward change. "To nurture your light," he explained, "you must stop scattering it to the winds of external opinions. Instead, draw it inward, protect it, and let it grow." Aiko began to see that boundaries were not walls to keep others out, but protective shields to safeguard her energy, allowing her to flourish from within. With this newfound understanding, Aiko started practicing what Master Ryo called the art of selective sharing. She learned to discern when and with whom to share her thoughts, feelings, and dreams. By limiting her openness to those who truly valued and respected her, she found that her relationships began to change. The connections that remained felt deeper and more genuine, built on mutual respect rather than a one-sided need for validation. This shift gave Aiko a profound sense of empowerment. No longer did she feel the compulsion to explain herself or seek approval. Instead, she reveled in the quiet strength of knowing her worth was independent of others' opinions. Aiko also began to nurture her light through solitude, creating intentional moments of stillness in her daily life. She would sit by the pond in the temple gardens, her mind focused on her breath, and visualize her inner light growing brighter with each inhalation. These practices became sacred rituals, grounding her in the present and reinforcing her boundaries. Solitude, she realized, was not a lonely retreat, but a space where she could reconnect with her true self and replenish her energy. In this sanctuary, she discovered a clarity and resilience that had eluded her in the constant noise of the outside world. She no longer felt the need to defend her boundaries. They became an integral part of her being, effortlessly protecting her peace. As the weeks turned into months, Aiko felt a profound transformation taking place within her. She no longer sought validation from others, nor did she feel the need to explain her choices. Instead, she focused on nurturing her inner light, drawing strength from the sanctuary she had built within herself. Her healing was no longer dependent on external factors, but was rooted in the quiet, steady work of self-preservation. By honoring her boundaries and embracing solitude, Aiko found a freedom she had never known, a freedom to be herself, to love herself fully, and to engage with the world on her own terms. Master Ryo's teachings had shown her that true strength came not from how much she shared, but from how deeply she honored the sacred light within. Over the next few weeks, Aiko fully embraced the practice of inner solitude, transforming her daily routine into a sacred ritual of self-connection and peace. Each morning, she would sit quietly in her room, her body grounded, her mind focused, and her spirit open. As she meditated, she turned her attention inward, observing the rhythm of her breath, the soft inhale, the calming exhale, a gentle reminder of her existence in its purest form. She began to visualize her inner garden, a sanctuary untouched by the judgments, opinions, and chaotic energies of the outside world. In this mental haven, the air was calm, the flowers vibrant, and the pathways clear, representing the harmony she sought within herself. With each passing day, the act of meditating on her inner garden became more than just a mental exercise. It became an act of profound self-care and healing. In this space of solitude, Aiko found a new kind of strength she had never known before. It was not the external kind, driven by accomplishments or the approval of others, but an inner fortitude that came from simply being present with herself. The more she cultivated her private sanctuary, the more she felt a quiet resilience taking root within her. She realized that much of her previous exhaustion and emotional turbulence had stemmed from constantly exposing herself to external noise, be it the unsolicited opinions of others or the unspoken expectations she had tried to meet. By withdrawing into her inner garden, she gave herself permission to let go of these influences, allowing her mind and spirit to rest and renew. This practice of solitude was not an act of isolation, but a deliberate choice to prioritize her well-being over the demands of the outside world. As she nurtured this habit, Aiko noticed profound changes in her perspective. The judgments and opinions of others, which had once felt so overwhelming, now seemed distant, almost irrelevant. In the quiet of her meditation, she could see them for what they were, external projections that held no true power over her. By keeping her inner world private, she began to experience a growing sense of self-ownership, an understanding that her peace and happiness were hers to cultivate and protect. This realization brought a newfound clarity to her life. The boundaries she established around her inner self became less about shutting people out and more about creating a safe space for her own growth. In doing so, she felt lighter, freer, and more connected to the essence of who she was. The practice of maintaining her inner garden also opened Aiko's eyes to the beauty of the present moment. In the stillness of her solitude, she became acutely aware of the simple joys around her. The warmth of sunlight streaming through her window, the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, the gentle rhythm of her breath. These moments, once overlooked in the rush of daily life, now felt like treasures, reminders of the peace she could find within herself. Aiko began to see her inner garden not just as a refuge, but as a source of inspiration, a reminder that she had everything she needed to feel whole and content. This shift in focus allowed her to let go of her need for external validation, replacing it with a deep appreciation for the present and a trust in her own journey. Through this process, Aiko also became more mindful of the energies she allowed into her life. She recognized that not everyone or everything deserved access to her inner garden. This discernment extended to her relationships, her work, and even her thoughts. She became more intentional, learning to say no to situations and people that disrupted her peace. At the same time, she made room for what nourished her soul, be it meaningful conversations, creative pursuits, or simply moments of quiet reflection. By protecting her inner world, Aiko found that she was better equipped to handle the challenges of life. Her resilience was no longer tied to external factors, but grew from the unshakable foundation she had built within herself. As weeks turned into months, Aiko's practice of inner solitude became an integral part of her life. It was no longer something she did, but a way of being, a state of mind that guided her actions and interactions. She realized that her inner garden was not a fixed place, but a living, evolving space that required ongoing care and attention. And while the outside world continued to bustle with noise and chaos, she no longer felt compelled to participate in it the same way. Her peace came from within, from the quiet strength she had cultivated through her practice. Aiko's journey of nurturing her inner garden became a testament to the power of solitude, not as a retreat from life, but as a means of engaging with it more fully from a place of wholeness and authenticity. Master Ryo's wisdom unfolded like the petals of a lotus, revealing a profound truth that Aiko had never fully considered: the power of silence as a shield for one's deepest dreams. He introduced her to the concept of the veil of silence, a Zen practice that emphasized the importance of guarding one's thoughts, plans, and aspirations until they were strong enough to stand on their own. He likened these aspirations to seeds planted in the fertile darkness of the soil, hidden from the elements. A seed exposed too early, he explained, may be scorched by the sun or carried away by the wind, never given the chance to root itself firmly. His analogy struck a deep chord within her as she began to see how her tendency to share prematurely had left her vulnerable to doubt, criticism, and external influences. The idea of nurturing dreams in solitude was both foreign and liberating to Aiko. For much of her life, she had equated openness with authenticity, believing that sharing her goals with others would strengthen her resolve. Yet as Master Ryo spoke, she realized how fragile her unformed dreams had been, often wilting under the weight of others' opinions or the pressure of external expectations. She saw how, in her eagerness to connect, she had inadvertently allowed the seeds of her aspirations to be trampled. This realization was both humbling and empowering, as it offered her a new way to approach her inner world with reverence and patience. She began to see the veil of silence not as a barrier, but as a sanctuary, a protective layer that allowed her aspirations to take root and grow in their own time. Under Master Ryo's guidance, Aiko began practicing this quiet cultivation of her dreams. Each morning, she would sit in meditation, visualizing her intentions as tiny seeds within her heart. She imagined the dark, nurturing soil where they rested, safe from the noise and scrutiny of the outside world. With each breath, she nourished these seeds, allowing them to grow steadily and naturally. She learned to resist the urge to share her ideas too early, recognizing that silence was not an act of secrecy, but an expression of care. By holding her aspirations close, she gave them the space to evolve into something robust and authentic, untouched by external forces. This practice of silence brought with it a profound sense of clarity. As Aiko withdrew from the need to seek validation or approval, she found that her dreams became clearer and more aligned with her true self. The veil of silence helped her filter out the voices of others that had often clouded her vision. Without the weight of external expectations, her aspirations grew stronger, more defined, and more resilient. She began to understand that true strength came from within, from the quiet determination that grew in the absence of noise. This realization deepened her connection to herself, as she learned to trust her own instincts and intuition. Master Ryo's teachings also instilled in Aiko a sense of patience she had never known. The veil of silence was not just about withholding, but about waiting for the right moment when her dreams were ready to face the world. This patience extended beyond her aspirations to her relationships and daily life. She found herself less reactive, more composed, and more deliberate in her actions. The practice of silence gave her the time and space to reflect, to ensure that her words and deeds were aligned with her intentions. It was a slow, deliberate process, but it brought her a deep sense of peace and purpose. As Aiko embraced the veil of silence, she noticed a profound transformation in how she viewed her aspirations and her place in the world. Her dreams, once fragile and fleeting, now felt like solid pillars within her, built on a foundation of quiet confidence. She no longer felt the need to prove herself or seek reassurance from others. Instead, she found joy in the quiet act of nurturing her inner world, knowing that when the time was right, her aspirations would bloom naturally, as vibrant and enduring as the lotus that grows in the stillness of the pond. This shift allowed her to engage with life from a place of wholeness, rooted in the knowledge that her dreams were her own to nurture, protect, and eventually share. Aiko found that this new approach to life brought an unparalleled depth and richness to her existence. For years, she had felt compelled to voice every thought, share every feeling, and seek connection through transparency, believing that doing so was essential for genuine relationships. Yet, as she began to embrace silence and solitude, she realized how much of herself she had been scattering into the world without truly understanding the cost. The silence she once feared became her ally, and solitude transformed into a wellspring of strength she had never before tapped into. This deliberate pause from the noise of external validation offered her the chance to listen to her own heart, a voice that had long been drowned out by the clamor of others' expectations and opinions. In this newfound stillness, Aiko discovered an inner strength that felt both ancient and eternal. It was as though a hidden reservoir of resilience had been waiting patiently for her to find it. No longer did she feel the need to explain herself or seek approval to validate her thoughts and feelings. By keeping her inner world private, she cultivated a sacred connection with herself, something untouchable and unshakable. Her heart, once exposed to the shifting winds of outside judgment, became a sanctuary, a serene refuge where she could retreat to recharge, reflect, and heal. This sacred space was hers alone, a garden of serenity that no one could trespass upon without her permission. As Aiko began to guard her inner sanctuary, she realized that this act of self-preservation was not selfish, as she had once feared, but a profound gesture of self-love. She had spent so much time giving parts of herself away, her energy, her emotions, her trust, without ever questioning whether others were deserving of such access. Now, by holding her innermost self sacred and shielding it from the gaze of others, she was reclaiming her power. This act of self-containment allowed her to conserve her emotional energy and focus it on her own healing. The wounds that had lingered within her for years, wounds inflicted by disappointment, betrayal, and unfulfilled expectations, began to mend as she poured her energy inward rather than outward. Aiko's heart became her fortress, not a place of isolation, but a realm of self-replenishment. It was here, in the quiet of her own company, that she found the courage to face her fears, confront her pain, and release the weight of past burdens. She realized that healing wasn't about others understanding her struggles or apologizing for their wrongs. True healing came from within, from the act of acknowledging her own worth and nurturing her spirit with the kindness and care she had once so freely given to others. By turning her gaze inward, she discovered the immense capacity she had to heal herself, a capacity that no one else could provide. This inner transformation brought an unexpected sense of freedom. No longer bound by the need to broadcast her thoughts or justify her emotions, Aiko found peace in simply being. She began to cherish the quiet moments of reflection, the pauses between words, and the spaces where she could simply exist without explanation. This newfound depth allowed her to see herself more clearly, to understand her desires, and to align her actions with her true values. The clarity and confidence that emerged from this process radiated outward, creating a ripple effect that subtly transformed her interactions and relationships. Through this journey, Aiko came to understand that the act of preserving her inner world was not just a strategy for healing, but a way of honoring her own humanity. By choosing what to share and what to keep sacred, She was reclaiming her autonomy and redefining the boundaries of her life. This realization brought her an unparalleled sense of peace and fulfillment, a sense that she was finally living in alignment with her truest self. And in holding her light within, Aiko discovered the profound power of self-love, a power that could heal, transform, and illuminate even the darkest corners of her soul. As Aiko delved deeper into her journey, she began to observe profound changes in her relationships. The individuals who had once taken advantage of her boundless openness seemed to quietly fade from her life, like leaves carried away by the wind. Their absence didn't fill her with sadness, but rather a sense of relief, as if a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had been lifted. In their place, she found herself surrounded by people who valued her presence, who approached her with genuine care and respect. These were individuals who honored her boundaries, understanding that her time, energy, and trust were precious gifts rather than entitlements. It was as if her newfound self-respect acted as a filter, naturally repelling those who sought to drain her spirit and drawing closer those who truly appreciated her light. During one of her daily visits to the temple, Aiko shared these observations with Master Rio, who listened with a knowing smile. He explained, "When you respect yourself, the world mirrors that respect back to you. The energy of self-worth is like a beacon. It attracts those who value it and discourages those who do not." His words resonated deeply with Aiko, helping her to see that her inner transformation was not only affecting her, but also reshaping the dynamics of her external world. By setting clear boundaries and standing firm in her sense of self, she was teaching others how she deserved to be treated. She was no longer giving away her power in exchange for approval or connection, but instead radiating a quiet confidence that commanded respect. Aiko came to understand that by guarding her heart and nurturing her inner self, she was building an invisible shield, a barrier of love and respect that protected her from harm. This shield wasn't built from walls meant to shut others out, but from the firm yet compassionate boundaries that allowed her to engage with others without losing herself. It was a reflection of the love she had cultivated within, a love that was steady and unwavering, independent of external validation. This shield gave her the strength to say no when necessary, to walk away from relationships that no longer served her, and to stand tall in the face of criticism or misunderstanding. It was not a defense mechanism born of fear, but a manifestation of her self-awareness and self-worth. As Aiko continued to honor her boundaries, she noticed that her interactions became more intentional and meaningful. The people who remained in her life were those who truly valued her for who she was, not for what she could offer or do for them. These relationships were built on mutual respect and understanding, creating a sense of balance and harmony that Aiko had never experienced before. She felt more present and connected in these relationships, knowing that she could give freely without fear of being drained or taken for granted. Each interaction became an opportunity to share her authentic self, knowing that it would be met with kindness and acceptance. The invisible shield she had created also allowed Aiko to navigate conflicts and misunderstandings with greater ease. Instead of reacting defensively or taking things personally, she found herself approaching these situations with a sense of calm and clarity. Her self-worth was no longer tied to the opinions or actions of others, freeing her from the emotional turbulence that had once consumed her. This inner stability allowed her to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively, transforming potential confrontations into opportunities for growth and deeper connection. Through this journey, Aiko realized that the power of self-respect extended far beyond her personal well-being. It was a gift she gave to the world, inspiring others to reflect on their own boundaries and self-worth. By embodying the principles of self-love and respect, she became a quiet example of what it meant to live authentically and courageously. Her transformation was a testament to the profound impact of nurturing one's inner self, a reminder that when we honor our own light, we empower others to do the same. Over time, Aiko's life underwent a profound transformation. She began to approach relationships with a newfound discernment, carefully choosing to share her thoughts, emotions, and vulnerabilities only with those who truly respected her boundaries. Gone were the days when she felt obligated to bare her soul to anyone who asked. Instead, she cultivated a sense of self-respect that guided her interactions, ensuring that her inner world remained a sanctuary rather than a space for others to tread carelessly. This shift in perspective did not make her distant or detached. On the contrary, it allowed her to connect with others on a deeper and more meaningful level. The relationships she fostered were now built on mutual respect and understanding, a stark contrast to the draining and one-sided connections she had experienced in the past. By learning to value herself, Aiko discovered that her capacity to love and support others grew exponentially. She realized that true connection did not require her to sacrifice her own well-being or constantly place others' needs above her own. In fact, the opposite was true. When she prioritized nurturing her own soul, she became a wellspring of strength and compassion. Aiko no longer approached relationships from a place of depletion, but from a reservoir of inner abundance. This change not only improved her own quality of life, but also enriched the lives of those around her. People were drawn to her radiant energy, sensing the calm and confidence she exuded, and they found her presence both grounding and inspiring. Her journey of self-love also taught Aiko an invaluable lesson. Helping others is most impactful when it comes from a place of wholeness. In the past, her desire to support those around her often left her feeling drained and unappreciated as she poured out her energy without taking the time to replenish it. Now, she understood that the most meaningful acts of kindness and compassion began with self-care. By nurturing her inner world, she was able to show up fully for others, not out of obligation or a need for validation, but because she genuinely wanted to. This shift allowed her to give freely without resentment or exhaustion, transforming her relationships into spaces of mutual growth and encouragement. As Aiko embraced this new way of living, she noticed how her perception of herself evolved. She no longer equated selflessness with self-sacrifice, or believed that she had to diminish her own needs to be of value to others. Instead, she recognized the importance of balance, of honoring her own boundaries while still being present for the people she cared about. This balance allowed her to thrive in ways she had never imagined. Aiko's sense of self-worth became unshakable, rooted not in how others perceived her, but in the love and respect she had cultivated for herself. This inner stability gave her the strength to face life's challenges with grace and to support others without losing sight of her own well-being. Over time, Aiko's transformation inspired those around her to embark on their own journeys of self-discovery. Her life became a quiet testament to the power of self-love and the importance of setting boundaries. Friends and loved ones began to see the value in prioritizing their own needs and creating space for their own healing. Aiko's presence served as a reminder that strength comes not from overextending oneself, but from cultivating a deep and unwavering connection to one's own spirit. Through her actions, she demonstrated that it was possible to be both compassionate and self-protective, both giving and grounded. In nurturing her own soul, Aiko not only healed herself, but also became a source of light and encouragement for others. She showed that the path to true connection lies in first establishing a strong foundation within. By respecting her own boundaries and valuing her inner world, she created a life that was both fulfilling and harmonious. Aiko's journey was a testament to the transformative power of self-love, proving that when we care for ourselves, we become stronger, kinder, and more capable of uplifting those around us. In the final stages of her journey, Aiko embraced the profound Buddhist teaching of impermanence, a realization that all things in life, whether relationships, circumstances, or even her own emotions, are in a constant state of flux. This understanding brought her an unexpected sense of freedom. She began to see relationships not as permanent fixtures meant to provide endless validation, but as fleeting connections that could enrich her life without defining it. Aiko recognized that the essence of true peace was not in holding on to others' understanding or approval, but in cultivating her own sense of completeness. This inner transformation was not about closing herself off, but about relinquishing the need to rely on external forces for a sense of worth. She learned that her value was not dictated by the perceptions of others, but by the deep connection she had nurtured within herself. As Aiko internalized the nature of impermanence, she found herself releasing old patterns of clinging to relationships or striving for validation. She no longer feared the natural ebb and flow of connections in her life, understanding that each encounter, no matter how brief, carried its own lessons and beauty. Instead of investing her energy into trying to control or maintain relationships beyond their natural course, Aiko embraced them as they were, dynamic, evolving, and transient. This shift in perspective allowed her to approach every interaction with an open heart and an open mind, cherishing the moments she shared with others while accepting that these moments were not hers to hold on to indefinitely. This detachment was not born of apathy, but of profound self-awareness and respect for the impermanent nature of all things. Her newfound understanding of impermanence also reshaped how Aiko viewed herself. She no longer felt the need to explain her choices or prove her worth to anyone. The need for validation, once a constant source of anxiety and exhaustion, began to dissolve. She realized that the opinions of others were as fleeting as the clouds in the sky, always changing, never fixed. This insight allowed her to reclaim the energy she had once expended on seeking approval and redirect it toward cultivating her own growth and happiness. By stepping away from the constant need for external acknowledgement, Aiko unlocked a deeper level of self-acceptance. She found comfort in her solitude, knowing that she was enough exactly as she was without needing the world to confirm it. With this freedom, Aiko approached her relationships with a sense of lightness and clarity. She was no longer burdened by the fear of rejection or the pressure to be fully understood by everyone she encountered. Instead, she reveled in the joy of connection without feeling compelled to share every part of herself. Aiko had learned to protect her inner sanctuary, keeping her most sacred thoughts and emotions for herself, while still engaging meaningfully with the people in her life. This balance allowed her to experience deeper connections, untainted by the need to please or perform. Her relationships became more authentic and fulfilling because they were rooted in mutual respect and appreciation rather than a dependence on external validation. Aiko's detachment from the need to seek approval didn't isolate her. Instead, it enriched her interactions with others. She realized that by letting go of her expectations and the desire to be understood, she created space for genuine connections to flourish. People were drawn to her calm and confident energy, sensing the inner peace she radiated. Her presence became a reminder to others of the power of self-contentment, inspiring them to explore their own inner worlds. Aiko had become a living example of the Buddhist teaching that true freedom lies in releasing attachment, not only to things but to the idea that we need anything outside ourselves to feel whole. Ultimately, Aiko's embrace of impermanence was not about giving up on relationships or the beauty of connection. It was about recognizing that these connections, like all aspects of life, were fleeting yet meaningful. She learned to cherish the moments she shared with others while holding on to her own light. This detachment didn't diminish the depth of her relationships, but allowed her to approach them with greater presence and authenticity. Free from the need to prove, explain, or seek approval, Aiko finally felt the weight of expectations lift from her shoulders. She walked forward with a heart unburdened, a mind at peace, and a spirit that was wholly her own. Through her journey, Aiko discovered that true self-love was not about isolating herself or rejecting the beauty of relationships, but about building a resilient and unshakable inner world. This inner sanctuary became her sacred refuge, a quiet, protected space where she could retreat to recharge her spirit and reconnect with her essence. In this haven, far from the noise and distractions of the outside world, Aiko found clarity and strength. This space wasn't a form of hiding, but a deliberate act of nurturing her soul, allowing her to heal from the wounds inflicted by life's challenges and external pressures. By cultivating this inner world, she began to understand that self-love wasn't selfish. It was the foundation for living an authentic and fulfilling life. Her sanctuary became a wellspring of renewal, where she could ground herself in her truth, free from the expectations and judgments of others. As her inner world flourished, Aiko experienced a profound transformation. She no longer depended on external validation or sought approval to feel worthy. The inner sanctuary she had cultivated gave her a sense of unshakable confidence, allowing her to stand firmly in her own identity. This newfound peace enabled her to approach life with a calm and centered presence, weathering storms with grace and clarity. The need for external reassurances faded, replaced by the empowering realization that her worth came from within. Her sanctuary was a place where she could be unapologetically herself, nurturing her spirit and fortifying her resilience against life's inevitable challenges. This inner strength became the cornerstone of her interactions with the world, giving her the capacity to engage fully while remaining true to herself. With this deep sense of peace radiating from within, Aiko's interactions with others shifted dramatically. She no longer sought connection out of fear or insecurity, but approached relationships from a place of wholeness. Her calm and confident energy naturally drew people toward her, not because she demanded attention, but because she exuded a quiet strength and authenticity that others found inspiring. This light she carried was not dependent on others. It was the product of the love and respect she had cultivated for herself. Aiko realized that her inner sanctuary was not only a place of refuge, but also a source of light she could share with others. By protecting her inner peace, she created deeper, more meaningful connections, grounded in mutual respect rather than a need for validation. Aiko's transformation also brought a new perspective to her relationships. She learned to set boundaries that honored her inner peace without guilt or hesitation. These boundaries were not walls to keep people out, but were lines drawn with love, ensuring that her light was not dimmed by negativity or disrespect. She embraced the idea that true connection comes from a place of mutual upliftment, and that it was not her responsibility to pour from an empty cup. Through this balance, Aiko was able to offer support to others without sacrificing her well-being. She realized that nurturing her soul didn't detract from her ability to help others. Instead, it enhanced it. By prioritizing her self-love, she became a stronger, more compassionate presence in the lives of those who mattered most to her. Over time, Aiko's life was filled with relationships that reflected the respect and love she had cultivated within herself. The people who once drained her energy and took advantage of her openness naturally faded from her life, replaced by those who appreciated and honored her boundaries. This shift was not forced, but was a natural result of the energy she now carried, an energy rooted in self-respect and inner peace. Aiko discovered that by valuing herself, she could engage with others more deeply, but without losing herself in the process. Her interactions became enriching rather than depleting as she learned to navigate life with a quiet confidence that could not be shaken by external forces. Ultimately, Aiko's journey became a living testament to the transformative power of self-love and inner solitude. By nurturing her sanctuary within, she had not only healed, but had also found a strength she never knew she possessed. This strength allowed her to connect with the world from a place of authenticity and wholeness, free from the need to prove herself or seek approval. Her story reminded those around her that the most profound gift we can give ourselves is the cultivation of an inner world where our light can grow undisturbed. Through this practice, Aiko found peace, resilience, and a joy that radiated outward, inspiring others to embark on their own journeys of self-discovery and love. As Aiko embraced this wisdom, her transformation naturally began to ripple outward. She didn't feel the need to convince others or offer unsolicited advice. Instead, she became a quiet but profound presence in the lives of those around her. Her peace, resilience, and authenticity spoke louder than words. Aiko's life became a living testament to the power of inner solitude, a reminder that true self-love comes not from external validation, but from nurturing one's inner world. Her presence alone inspired others to reflect on their own lives, to consider what parts of themselves they had neglected or given away too freely. Rather than telling others what to do, Aiko embodied the strength she had found. When friends or acquaintances sought her counsel, she listened with empathy and patience. She would share pieces of her own journey, always framing her experiences as lessons unique to her path. "What works for me," she would often say, "may look different for you. The important thing is to find what feels true to your soul." Her humility and openness created a safe space for others to explore their own needs, boundaries, and desires without fear of judgment or comparison. Aiko's transformation didn't just strengthen her relationships, it reshaped them. Those who had once taken her openness for granted began to fade from her life, while those who respected her boundaries grew closer. She learned that by valuing herself, she attracted connections that were rooted in mutual respect and authenticity. These relationships didn't demand her to give away parts of herself, but celebrated her wholeness. Through her example, she taught others that true connection doesn't come from sacrificing oneself, but from meeting others as an equal, grounded in self-worth. As she continued her journey, Aiko became deeply attuned to the power of boundaries. She realized that protecting her inner world wasn't about shutting people out. It was about creating space for herself to thrive. She likened it to tending a garden, ensuring that the soil of her spirit remained fertile and undisturbed by negativity or external pressures. This act of self-preservation didn't make her less available to others. In fact, it made her more present and compassionate. By prioritizing her own well-being, she could support those around her without feeling depleted. The words of Master Rio often guided her. The true gift of life lies not in what we give to others, but in what we keep sacred within ourselves. Aiko held these words close, allowing them to shape her decisions and actions. She realized that self-love wasn't a selfish act, but a necessary one. By keeping parts of herself sacred, she could show up in the world with a strength that was unwavering, unshaken by the opinions or demands of others. This strength wasn't loud or boastful. It was quiet, steady, and deeply rooted in her being. In the end, Aiko's life became a beacon of hope for those who struggled to find balance in their own lives. She radiated a calm confidence that drew others to her, not because she sought their approval, but because she no longer needed it. Her journey reminded everyone she encountered that the path to peace and resilience begins within. By protecting what is sacred within ourselves, we unlock the freedom to live authentically, to connect meaningfully, and to navigate life with grace. Through her example, Aiko taught that self-love is not about what we give to the world, but about honoring the light we keep burning within.